Hello and welcome. Let's take a look at our top story, starting with the Gen Z protests gaining momentum in Africa. In Madagascar, anti-government protesters have called for fresh demonstrations and a general strike, seeking to force President Andry Rajoelina to step down. Now, fresh youth-led protests have erupted in Madagascar after the president sacked his government. Thousands of protesters rallied in the capital of Antananarivo on Tuesday to protest against repeated water and power cuts across the country. Police fired tear gas and rubber bullets at the protesters marching in the capital, calling for the President Andry Rajoelina's resignation. On Monday, President Rajoelina sacked his government to quell days of deadly unrest that has reportedly killed at least 22 people and injured over 100 others so far.
Maybe we haven't met the needs you aspired to, or even listened to the cries and fears you experienced. Therefore, in accordance with Article 54 of the Constitution, I have today taken the decision to dismiss the Prime Minister and dissolve his government.
The president apologized to the people and vowed to find solutions to the country's problems. But this was not enough to end the protests. The Gen Z protesters want the president himself to quit.
This is not a solution. The evil has not been eradicated. Nothing will change. Andry Rajoelina must leave. We demand Andry Rajoelina resignation. He has been in power for 16 years, but nothing has changed. The living conditions of the Malagasy people are deteriorating and getting worse every day. Our future is getting darker.
Protesters gathered in the capital and chanted slogans calling for Rajoelina's resignation. They waved flags with a pirate skull from the Japanese anime One Piece, which has become the symbol of the youth-led demonstrations. Young protesters accused the president of oppression and asked him to step down if he truly loved the country.
What we are demanding is the resignation of the president because we no longer agree with his policies, especially this oppression. We don't like it at all. The forces are no longer working to protect the population but to frighten it. And we are not afraid at all. Moreover, oppression is not a solution.
Last week, the protests spiraled into widespread nighttime looting, prompting authorities to declare a dusk-to-dawn curfew. These protests were publicized online and mirror the youth-led anti-government protests in Nepal, Indonesia, Kenya, and Nigeria. But the widespread chaos and unrest that the president has not given any indication of stepping down. Now, Rajoelina first came to power in 2009 following a coup sparked by an uprising which ousted the former president, Marc Ravalomanana. Now, he did not contest the 2013 election due to the international pressure and was voted back into office in 2018. Now, Rajoelina was re-elected in 2023 in contested elections boycotted by the opposition. Madagascar is a large island of nearly 32 million people off the east coast of Africa. Though the country is rich in natural resources, it ranks among the world's poorest countries. The World Bank has recorded a sharp rise in poverty levels in urban areas in Madagascar in recent years. The public discontent is on the rise in Madagascar, and the failure of authorities to provide reliable supplies of water and electricity has further fueled the outrage. Protests have already compelled the president to sack his government, and now it remains to be seen if and for how long President Rajoelina can resist the Gen Z protesters calling for his resignation. And for more on this, we have with us Khani Magubane, a political analyst who is joining us live from Johannesburg, South Africa. Thank you for being with us, Khani. Great to have you on the show as always.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, President Rajoelina has already dismissed his government and has apologized. Yet the protests continue. What does this tell us about the depth of public frustration? And why do you think this gesture has failed to calm the unrest?
I think this gesture has failed to calm the unrest because it was not the solution that was needed to the problem, because the people's problem was not so much who was in cabinet or who the government officials are, but it was the systematic, destroying of the infrastructure that we've seen over the years. When there's no proper plan in terms of infrastructure development, it's bound over time to really lead to these type of problems. So the reaction or the response by the President Andry Rajoelina to fire his cabinet and his prime minister was a misreading of the current situation on the ground. The people are crying for conditions that can no longer be accepted. They can no longer live under these conditions. Young people are saying whether it's person A or person B that is in power, that's not really our fight. What our fight is for a change in our social and lived experience. Because remember that in Africa, it's the same story over and over again. A minerally rich country that should otherwise be wealthy, that should otherwise be able to provide for all its citizens, is unable to because of the incapacitation of its government. Governments in places like in Madagascar, they are not capacitated properly, and I think that the president has misread the anger of the young people. They are mobilizing through digital platforms, TikTok, Facebook, and X. They are using what they know to talk to young people in Nepal, in the Philippines, in Morocco, to learn from them and to say we too refuse, to have those same realities being our future, because young people are looking at their future and they're asking themselves, is this the future of Madagascar that we want? And they are saying change today and change now.
Yes, and Kani, you've drawn the comparison there, the protests being compared to the Gen Z-driven movements in places like Indonesia and Nepal, with strong symbolism like the one-piece pirate flag. What does this tell us about the broader trend of these youth-led protests that are gaining momentum in Africa?
What it's telling us is that young people refuse to be on the sidelines. They want to be in the center of what is decided about them. They want to be in the center of deciding what future they want tomorrow, because the people that are in power today, they're going to retire and they're going to die, and they will be left with no institutional memory as young people to carry on. And what young people, even in places like Kenya, we know that Raila Odinga in Kenya also came under fierce protests in Nairobi for the same reasons of young people wanting change. What is that change that young people want? Well, young people want their countries to be brought into the global village, because all of these countries where the Gen Z protests are happening are third world countries that have similarities in terms of old infrastructure, water, electricity problems, general unemployment, poverty, very high poverty levels. And yet these are countries that have a history of colonialism, that have a history of being oppressed by the West. And after independence, most of these countries that are now stepping up through young people have failed to bring those countries into the global village as global players. Madagascar is a painfully country, even though it's an island, the fifth largest island in the world, that should otherwise be doing very well. So young people are making a very strong statement to say we will not be isolated, we will not be part of another generation of poverty, we will not be living like how our parents lived and how our grandparents. We want something new for ourselves. And I think this is a moment really to behold in Africa, because this movement is going to spread. You know, even in countries like South Africa, young people are frustrated in South Africa because we also face very high levels of unemployment, youth unemployment, high levels of alcohol abuse, high levels of people registering at universities and colleges and studying and graduating, but not working. So when you're having young people getting into the system, the economic system, with no plan, you know, you graduate from university and you're sitting at home for 5 years, it's going to build frustration. These are similar frustrations that young people in Madagascar have been helped, you know, by the youth of other countries. So it's only a matter of time before we see similar protests spreading across the continent. The question is, are the current leaders ready for the fire of young people? And I don't think so. The 22 people that have been killed, the UN, you know, put those numbers forward, yet the government is disputing those numbers. And we saw young people marching with a coffin earlier on of one of their own that were killed. So it may be a generational problem too.
Yes, Kang. Absolutely. We'll leave it there. Thank you very much. As always, great to have you on the show. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
Firstpost now available in 9 languages on YouTube. English,
Stands at $36 trillion.
French,
Le FMI, comme
German,
Geschäftsführenden Direktor,
Hindi,
$30 trillion kakarjo.
Indonesian,
Pemerintah tanpa pemeriksaan.
Italian,
Sekali radikali.
Japanese,
4 兆ドル以上も
Portuguese,
por causa do próprio balanço patrimonial.
Spanish.
Beautiful bill.
Go to Settings, click on Audio Track and select a language of your choice. Be the first to know what's happening around you in your first language. Firstpost.